And if you look at all of the violent crime over the last 4 years,
here's a map.
They've all gone down.
U.S. cities, 17.47 per 100,000 population. Chicago is number one over Philadelphia, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Phoenix, Los Angeles, New York, and San Diego.
What I'm explaining to you is
you're
when
talking
you want to
about
fight
violent
crime. Look, you can pull statistics up.
No,
I can
these are
too.
murders.
I'm explaining to you.
So amidst everything we've been covering in Chicago in terms of the tension and violence against ICE, tonight Illinois JB Pritzker decided to go on Fox News for whatever reason. I don't know what he was really thinking here. This was always going to go poorly for him because it's pretty undeniable who he is and what he is doing. Yes, he has been abetting the violence committed by his own voter base against federal agents. Yes, he is a pro-open borders, sanctuary state Democrat who literally does get mad every time ICE does something, even if it is the deportation of a violent criminal. I would frankly respect Democrats a lot more if they were just honest about exactly who they were and what they're doing. Yes, we are violent communists. Yes, we are trying to lead a leftist insurrection against the United States. We endorse violence and we absolutely endorse open borders. Yet he's going to go here and try to say, no, actually, that's not true. No, I'm a sensible moderate who does believe in secure borders and all that stuff. And so easily, Bret Baier, of all people, who's not exactly a super partisan newscaster, right, is able to easily tear all of that apart with just like a single piece of paper. Actually, you said this. Actually, you did this. And JB Pritzker is like, So again, we'll react to that. I also want to tell you about the apparent investigation that the DOJ is launching against Chicago because we've seen plenty of radical actions, including the new ICE block app style situation they're trying to make for the official city. Right, so when it comes to the doxing of ICE agents and the way in which you literally see violent criminals chasing them around, trying to attack them in the streets, the government of that city and state is seeking to actually sponsor that on a state level. And I guess Pritzker is going to claim that's not happening as well. I don't know. We'll tell you about it, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. That's not only the best way to support our work, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, I mean, there's just so much to talk about here in this Fox News interview, but let's start with the most telling part of it. So Pritzker goes on to say what he's been saying, which is that ICE agents are racially profiling. They're grabbing people and tackling them when they're U.S. citizens, which, you know, is just not what is actually happening on the ground. They just make things up. They exaggerate. Yeah, if you're a U.S. citizen, maybe you shouldn't try to fight them, and then they get tackled to the ground, but then the U.S. citizen got attacked. But okay, fine, right? Bret Baier responds with a very simple question. Okay, if you're going to say all of this about ICE, sitting from your governor's mansion all the way down the state in like Springfield, then would you be willing to go on a ride along with ICE in Chicago to get a better understanding of what they do? Right? If you're going to say all this, then would you be willing to see all of this? And Pritzker responds by simply saying, no, I can see what they do. Oh, so in other words, you like admit that you're lying about all of this and you simply don't want to see it for yourself. Okay, take a listen.
They're instead literally racially profiling. We've seen it. All you have to do is go online and look at some of the videos. Just to be clear, because I think many people that are listening maybe haven't seen that
You don't
before.
think you're painting with a broad brush of all the ICE agents that are doing their job?
No, we're saying that if you're an ICE agent and you do these things, we think you ought to be held accountable. And yet no one in Washington, no one above them, no supervisor, no inspector general is holding anybody accountable. There literally haven't been any suspensions or firings for the terrible things that they've done, literally grabbing people, tackling them when they're U.S. citizens and have done zero
You've
wrong.
referred to ICE as Kristi Noem's thugs. Would you be willing to do a ride along with ICE in Chicago to get a better understanding about what they do and what they deal with?
I can see what they do on the streets of Chicago.
That is genuinely the most telling soundbite about this entire situation nationwide with ICE. His argument is, well, you can go online and see the videos. Well, if you go online, especially in liberal circles, as we pointed out time and time again, what do? They completely clip things out of context. They say, this innocent shop owner got raided by ICE, and then you learn about who they were, and not only are they illegal, they're like money laundering or something like that, but they don't mention that, right? U.S. citizen got tackled. Well, you don't show the moment before where they're assaulting the ICE agent, but as I've been saying, that's kind of a tactic the left has employed many different times in history, which is intentionally agitate and provoke a situation, and then be like, oh, get the cameras out because they're tear gassing or they're tackling killing people. It's like, no. And again, like, it's a very basic question. Okay, so you're saying all of these things according to JB Pritzker, your great sources, what I've seen on the internet. Well, you're the governor of Illinois. Would you be willing to actually go see that for yourself? No, of course not. I don't need to. Why? Because if you went along, you probably find out about what ICE is actually doing. But ladies and gentlemen, the gaslighting just goes on for this entire interview. At a separate point, Bret Baier tries to ask, why does Chicago have the highest murder rate of all of the big cities? And of course, Prtizker responds by saying, no, that's not true, as Democrats have claimed. Don't you know crime is down? Don't you know Chicago actually has a really low murder rate? Except Bret Baier responds by pulling out the chart and showing it on the screen of, actually, that's not even true. You have an incredibly high murder rate. So take a listen.
Why does Chicago have the highest murder rate of all the big cities?
Well, we are not in the top 30 in terms of our murder rate. Indeed,
well,
our murder rate it has been cut in half over the last 4 years, and every year it's gone down by double digits. And if you look at all of the violent crime over the last 4 years,
here's a map.
They've all gone down.
U.S. cities, 17.47 per 100,000 population. Chicago is number one over Philadelphia, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Phoenix, Los Angeles, New York, and San Diego.
What I'm explaining to you is
you're
when
talking
you want to
about
fight crime. Look, you can pull statistics up.
No,
I can
these are
too.
murders.
I'm explaining to you that our murder rate has been cut in half. And very importantly, Brett, and you got to hear this, very importantly, we've been doing the things that are necessary to bring crime down, right? We've invested in community violence interruption. We've invested in police. I've added more state police than any governor in quite a long time. It's very important that we do both of those things and more to invest in our communities so that we bring crime down. We're doing that. You know who's doing the opposite? Donald Trump.
Yeah, Donald Trump, as usual. But serious question. If you say you need to do more, which clearly you do, because look at the chart, whatever you've done is obviously not enough. You know who's currently trying to help you with that? Donald Trump. You know who's been saying, hey, let's send federal agents into Chicago to help you out with crime. You say no. You say everything is perfectly fine because our city is safe. And they bring up this chart of, oh, you know, we're not even top 30 of violent crime rates. Well, it's the same argument when it came to D.C. and the federal takeover there. Oh, but look at the murder rate. The murder rate is insanely high. It's actually the highest of any most populous U.S. city in America. So how could it, first of all, I mean, murder obviously is the most important violent crime, but secondly, how could it even be logically possible that violent crime goes down, but murder goes up? Because logically speaking, if you have an epidemic like gang violence or crazy people running around on the streets, surely they're not just murdering people before doing nothing. They're committing many violent crimes before that. Well, of course, that's because of the fact that much like DC, Chicago is a liberal city where they've been trying to intentionally revise the violent crime rates down by simply not counting them as violent crimes, right? If you assault someone, that's not violent. If you carjack, that's not violent. When you degrade all the violent crimes to peaceful misdemeanors, then obviously you can say violent crime is down, but look how rapidly that Democrat argument comes apart when you see the chart right there. So you love that so much, okay? This talking point he's been running around the country trying to gaslight people about for a very long time is just so easily debunkable. But on the subject of crime, I think it's also a very relevant question. Do you support the deportation then of violent criminals who are illegals and non-citizens? That should be pretty common sense, right? You're tough on crime according to you. You suddenly made up this identity for yourself. Well, take a listen to Pritzker's answer to that as well, and then him also get fact-checked with the reality. Because no, it's an objective fact. His sanctuary city and sanctuary state policy is protecting the violent criminals. We'll show you the receipts of that in a second, but as usual, the guy is just lying. And then, like, are you seeing a repeated pattern here? Every single time he tries to say something, Bret Baier's like, no, that's not true. Here's what you're actually doing. Donald Trump. Okay, here's another example.
But do you believe any illegal immigrant charged with or convicted of a felony should be deported?
I think they ought to take the violent criminals and get them out of my state and get them out of the country. I absolutely believe that, but that's not what they're doing. They said they were going after the worst.
You don't help them because you're a sanctuary state, right?
No, we do. If you bring us a judicial warrant, we will bring you all kinds of help on the ground to go get the bad guys. That's what we want. We want the bad guys off the streets. What we don't want is for people to get racially profiled. That's what's happening right now.
Oh, really? You do? You actually, and the Democrats actually do support the deportation of violent criminals?
Details tonight on the men connected to a homicide involving a 63-year-old man on the Northwest Side, and that includes one of them having a recent run-in with police.
Our Chicago police sources tonight confirming they now have arrested 2 men who are in custody. Both are migrants from Venezuela and Ecuador, one we know in his early 20s.
Eso con deje que lo explique. Usted violó su derecho de inmigración, doméstico, federal o estatal. Usted fue arrestado. Con lo que va a pasar, ahorita lo vamos a llevar a la oficina, lo vamos a procesar. Le voy a dar la oportunidad de llamar a su familiar, ¿ok?
Right, and again, what is the common theme here? The sanctuary city and state policy of JB Pritzker's Illinois. There's a reason why these types of characters are continuously sheltered. And we know, you know how we know that's true, by the way? You know how we know that he doesn't really support the deportation of the violent criminals, as does any Democrat? Okay, none of them are actually sincere about any of this. Because it's written into the sanctuary city policy. Any sanctuary city policy, a core component is what? Local police and law enforcement will not cooperate with ICE. What does that mean? Well, when you get a suspect in the county jail who is arrested, who is an illegal alien, they do not share that data with ICE, which blocks ICE from arresting that person. Oftentimes, they'll hold the suspect in the jail and not even hand him over to federal authorities. And this shouldn't be surprising. Like, we know exactly what is happening. We also know anytime ICE does any raid in Chicago, it doesn't matter who it's against. It doesn't matter if the person is sincerely a violent criminal. What happens? A bunch of people show up to protest. Again, no matter who it is, Democrats, JB Pritzker will send a tweet about it saying, this is so bad, Donald Trump's authoritarian, no matter who it is, and a very common theme here. So that's exactly why, Mr. Prtizker, your little moderate rebrand that you're magically doing tonight is not going to work. And here's yet another example of that, where he tries to give Trump credit for securing the southern border. I know, shocker, right? But you see the strategy here? He's basically trying to create a wedge between the current ICE operations and what could be considered a quote-unquote more moderate position on immigration. So Democrats, their basic strategy here is like, let's abandon everything we've stood for the past not just 4 years, but an entire decade, which is, of course, open borders. Let's pretend like that never happened and say, we actually support secure borders and the deportations of violent criminals. It's only the non-violent ones that we want to keep in the United States. So that way they can appear to be like, as I said, right, a moderate party on the immigration issue, make Trump seem extreme, except we all know that's simply not true, and that's about to come apart even in itself. But all right, take a listen as JB Pritzker suddenly claims as a Democrat that they're pro-secure borders.
2 more things. What's the best thing that President Trump has done since being in office?
Well, that's a good question. I think, look, one thing I can say is that I asked President Biden and wrote a very public letter to deal with some of the problems at the border. We were seeing, tens of thousands of people being sent by Governor Abbott to Chicago, and we weren't getting any help really from the federal government. Here's what I would say. Since President Trump has taken office, we don't have the problem that existed before with people coming across the border.
Right, and this is a talking point we've actually heard a lot from Democrats recently. We're pro-secure borders. Okay, first and foremost, if that's true, then why didn't you do it? Why didn't you secure the border? Oh, because we had a bipartisan piece of legislation, and we need to have legislation in order to secure the border. Oh, really? How did Trump do it on day one then? It's very simple, because you guys are not for secure borders, right? You guys intentionally opened the border as to a means of securing what you thought would be more political power in this country. And there's yet another example of that, as in a recent clip speaking at the Economic Club of Chicago, you'll see exactly what we're talking about. He first of all says, quote, Democrats are not for open borders, and then 10 seconds later calls for giving citizenship to illegal aliens. So again, JB Pritzker, which one is it? Because these two ideas are not actually compatible, nor is any of your other rhetoric about deportations. We'll talk about that later. First, take a listen.
But it starts with that anybody who's progressive is for open borders.
Well, some people are.
Well, I'll tell you that Democrats are not for open border. I mean, we had a real problem, and we needed to do something about the border, but now we need to do something about the people who work for you and work for other people who are here and law-abiding, doing the right thing, and they want to be good Americans. They want a path towards staying in this country, whether we call it citizenship or just legal residency. We need to give them that path, and we're not doing it today. And the Republicans have never proposed this under Donald Trump. He wants to do something about immigration. He should have come into office, and right away he had control of the House and the Senate. The presidency could have passed immigration reform.
I mean, really, you just can't make that up, right? I'm for secure borders, but also we should give citizenship to all of the illegal aliens, and deportations are bad. Well, I don't think I should have to explain this, but those ideas are fundamentally incompatible. If you are pro-secure borders, and you admit, by the way, that what happened under Biden was an open border and it was a problem, then how exactly can you simultaneously oppose removing the very people who criminally and illegally took advantage of that open border and are now in the United States? That is the logical conclusion of secure borders. You have to deport the people who did not cross under a secure border, right? Who took advantage of it. That's the security part of the secure border, right? But according to JB Pritzker and the Democrats, it's like, okay, so this is what they're now claiming. They didn't do any of this under Biden, but now they're claiming, oh, I guess we should build the wall. I guess we should actually have a border patrol that's strong and all that stuff and turning people away. But if you like magically manage to escape and you make it 1 inch into the United States, you deserve citizenship? What the heck are you talking about, right? That's why I say, again, completely insincere. And furthermore, he points out too, and he claims, oh, I wrote a letter to Biden, see, I'm a moderate, that when it came to the migrant crisis in Chicago, the city was overwhelmed by what Texas was doing. Also pretty telling, by the way. The only reason he ever cared about the border crisis, same with many other Democrat mayors, is because quite brilliantly in retrospect, Texas, Florida, and many red states were making it the blue states' problem. They're like, hey, you claim we should be so in support of this, then you go deal with these people and have fun with it, right? But he claims the city was overwhelmed and it had all these problems and it was an issue. Yet when Trump, the next administration, comes and says, okay, let's solve that issue for you, let's remove and deport the people who are quote unquote overwhelming your city, as you said at the time, like 2 to 3 years ago, no, that's bad, that's cruel. It doesn't actually make any sense. And guys, as I said, it's not supposed to make sense. It's not even a sincere change of policy or heart. It is, again, simply a rhetorical strategy to make it look like we are the extremists on this issue and they are the moderates. But as I hope you seem to notice about basically any political debate in 2025, no, we are not the crazy ones. We are completely normal people who basically, a lot of MAGA supports ideas that used to be completely normal in American history and now considered radical, far right, right wing, all of those things. And again, another case study of it. No, deportations are not radical. No, closing the border is not radical. You know, it is opening the border to 10 million people, right? Which one is fundamentally trying to uproot and change society? The answer is the opening of the border part. That said, all right, here's another prime example. Let's take a listen here as Bret Baier tries to confront Prtizker on a lot of the extreme rhetoric, and by the way, not just rhetoric, actions. Very telling. You can always tell the difference between what Democrats say and what they're doing, especially on that open borders question. In terms of, do you think it's helping to contribute against violence towards ICE? And we'll take a listen to what Prtizker had to say.
In this environment, you're demonizing ICE agents. If some ICE agent gets killed, and we just saw an assassination attempt down in Dallas, isn't that not something that we should be really talking about like that?
The thing that we're demonizing is when ICE agents aren't following protocols. They aren't acting like law enforcement should act.
Yeah, again, not true. And we're talking about the same guy who, when just a couple of weeks ago, those terrorists smashed into ICE vehicles, tried to box them in, and then some woman had a gun and they had to shoot someone. He claimed the Trump administration was lying about that. And he actually would not even condemn what happened, right? But now he claims he's not demonizing the ICE agents. Well, it should not surprise you, as later on in this interview, he further refuses to condemn Democrat Virginia AG candidate Jay Jones. That is the one, of course, with the violent text messages. Because, of course, what's the central conclusion again? Democrats can put on whatever moderate face they want. When you break it down, they basically admit, yes, we are the party of political violence. And whether Pritzker sincerely believes this or he's that scared of the left-wing base who's going to come after him if he condemns Jay Jones, again, the outcome here is the exact same. They are the party of violence. Whether the politicians are in charge or the voter base in charge, it is the same.
Should the Virginia Attorney General nominee, Jay Jones, drop out of the race over those texts that have been the focus of this race?
Yeah, I think that the text that I think everybody points to, he's apologized about that. People make mistakes. They do.
So he shouldn't drop out.
It's one thing if someone's doing it repeatedly, right? If you're making comments repeatedly that are, like that no doubt that was an offensive thing to write.
You've donated $20,000 to Jay Jones' campaign.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, that was before anybody saw the text, but it doesn't matter. The point is, if he wasn't apologizing about it, if he didn't feel bad, and if he hadn't stood up and said, this is not how I really feel, I think everybody says, things along the way, particularly in politics, when you're getting attacked, that you probably shouldn't have said.
Oh, so you mean to tell me he totally sincerely apologized for it years later, only after it was further publicly revealed in the middle of his election campaign, and therefore that's okay, because he said sorry. Oh. So you mean to tell me the young Republicans get to be back in politics because they said sorry because of that scandal that you guys are obsessed with? You mean to tell me the thousands of people who got canceled for BLM or other if they just simply say sorry, then it's okay. Oh, but many of them did say sorry and it still wasn't okay, huh? But again, gaslighting, scumbag, lying, violent party. So we just basically saw all the attempts by Pritzker to make it seem like he's not doing anything crazy. Meanwhile, in reality world, tonight it was also announced that the Trump DOJ is launching an investigation into the city of Chicago that includes Pritzker, but also Lori Lightfoot, the prior mayor, and others for, of course, targeting ICE agents, which, again, Pritzker is claiming was not happening. Again, here's the truth and the reality.
JB Beck ribs Pritzker. They're doxing. They're telling people the whereabouts of ICE agents. Is that legal?
No. And Jesse, first time I've seen the Lori Lightfoot video is just now on your show. She will be getting a letter from us tomorrow to preserve anything that she's done as well to make sure that she's not violating the law. It appears she is. You cannot disclose the identity of a federal agent, where they live, anything that could harm them. Pritzker, same ball game with him. And, Pelosi got a letter today from Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. So did Brooke Jenkins, that DA in San Francisco. We told them, preserve your emails, preserve everything you have on this topic, because if you are telling people to arrest our ICE officers, our federal agents, you cannot do that. You're impeding an investigation, and we will charge them if they think they have not met me, because we will charge them if they are violating the law. We will protect our federal agents. They're out there working nonstop, as you're showing right now during a shutdown.
Well, I mean, look, we know how it goes with the DOJ sometimes, so I think we ought to be skeptical and see if it actually happens. But yeah, indeed, that is what Illinois is doing, right? The state government is creating an ICE thing so that they can dox the agents, and it's pretty well known. This is what almost all of these politicians are engaged in and supporting. And yes, it is illegal, right? Because you're talking about ICE, DHS, FBI, all those things. Yeah, I mean, you can't, especially as another politician, just try to disclose what is essentially classified information. But yeah, I mean, there you go. There you have it out of Illinois, a radical, violent, insurrectionist state. And, well, something ought to be done about it through the lens of the government. But that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.